All right, good morning. We are here again with the podcast. It's New Year. It's 2019, and we are joined by the one and only Ashley Lewis, one of our sixth grade teachers. So welcome, Ashley, to the podcast. And it is early in the morning. It's one of the earliest ones we've ever done.
It is early.
That'll tell you that Miss Lewis has some young kids at home. That's why she's here so early.
Yeah, that's for sure. We were up at like 6 o'clock this morning.
All right, so Miss Lewis, tell our community, our avid listeners, how did you get your start in education?
Well, I actually, when I was about 4 years old, decided I want to be a veterinarian. And I was dead set on it. I took all these science classes, and I was for sure that I was going to be a veterinarian. And I was in one of my science classes one day, and I was in the middle of this activity that I usually really enjoyed. And all of a sudden, it just hit me that I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. This is gross. This is nasty. I can't do this. And I walked out of the room and went to my next class, which was my English class. That was my favorite class. And I'd always really loved English, but I could not stand that class because the teacher was terrible. Oh, she was terrible. I loved reading and I loved the books that we were reading, but she didn't make it fun, and it really bugged me. And I was sitting in that class, and I just had this like light bulb moment that I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I need to do with my life. I need to be a teacher. So I switched out my science classes for this internship, and I was working with this second grade class that was across the street from my high school. And I don't even remember what we were doing, but I was working with this little second grade boy, and it was something math related, and I just saw him have that light bulb moment where he all of a sudden understood something, and he got this big grin on his face, and he was so excited because he could finally understand it. And that was it. That was the moment that I was like, I love that light bulb moment.
Yeah.
I want to work with kids for the rest of my life, and I got into the program at my university and fell in love with it, and just have been here ever since.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So besides the negative influence of the
right?
teacher you had, what was one of the positive influences you've had in your teaching career?
I think the most positive ones came after I actually became an educator. Because like when you're a student, you see at school differently than when you're a teacher. And I've had some amazing people that I've worked with that I have even one lady, I call her my guru, because she's such an amazing teacher. And I think they've probably influenced me the second most, and then the highest probably influence has been the students that I've had themselves. I've had every year, you have kids that you just connect with on just a really deep level. And, whether it was, I had one kid my first year at my previous school that said something so funny that literally my entire class stopped and just belly roll laughed. Just funny things like that, and kids that, you get to know and you just love, and they just become your own. I think they've been the biggest influence because I want to have more of those. I always tell people I have 120 plus children because that's what I have, and I think the kids are they just make it all good or bad. They make it all everything. So
along those lines, how do you celebrate those kids?
I think it depends on the kid, because there are some kids that don't like big outward celebrations. They just like you to come and give them a hug and say good job. And then there are other kids that, you got to make a big spectacle of it. So I try to get to know my kids as individually as I can, as much as they'll kind of let me get to know them, and base it off of that, and whatever they're comfortable with. I go full mom, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, that was so good, and get all silly, and they just laugh at me like, oh my gosh, you see them roll their eyes a little bit like, oh my gosh, but they're smiling and they feel good, and that's all that matters. Yeah.
So going back, I'm wondering if this is going to be your high school English teacher, but what's some of the worst teaching advice you ever received?
I don't know that I've ever gotten really awful advice, but I did get some advice that I've found in my career to not be true as much as it was given. I had this professor in college that I actually absolutely adored and really respected. Her name was Miss Peggy, and she told us right before we got our degrees and everything, she said, when you get into your first school, don't be the person that is negative in any way. Don't say anything in any way negative, just be positive all the time. And as I've taught, I tried to do that, and I realized that unfortunately that kind of builds this like fake wall between you and other people, because they're like, no, you're not always positive, things are going wrong. Like they want you to talk and get to know them, like the people that you work with, and they want to be able to troubleshoot ideas with you and help you. And so when I kind of not was negative, but was willing to like talk about problems and like troubleshoot and let my guard down almost in that way, I think it built better relationships. So it wasn't bad advice, but it was just, I think, needed to be reworded maybe.
Yeah.
You know?
I would agree with that. Letting your guard down and getting people to know the real you is a lot better than trying to come across as somebody that you're not.
Exactly.
I know you spend a ton of time here and you work super hard. So when you're outside of school, how do you recharge?
Well, I have 2 beautiful babies at home, and my husband, and my recharge is just to leave work here, and I go home and I just spend my time with my family. You know, I hold my daughter and I play dinosaurs with my son, and that's just what I need.
Who doesn't get recharged by dinosaurs?
Oh my gosh. Sure. Let me tell you what, that kid, he is going to run the world as far as dinosaurs are concerned someday.
Hey, that's all right.
Oh my goodness.
That's all right. So I'm thinking that, we talked a little bit about being the veterinarian, but that may have gone by the wayside with the grossness. So is there any other profession that you would want to try?
When I was in college, I was a sales lady for this national company that was posted out of the city I worked in, or I lived in, and I actually was really good at it, and I really enjoyed it. I loved interacting with the people, and I had, top salesman several months, and I was really proud of that because I was like 20 years old, and I thought I was so cool, But I hated being a desk jockey. Like I'm not a desk person. I like to be up and doing things, and I'll answer emails when I have to, but I like to be up and moving. And so if I did anything else, I'd have to be doing something where I was up and I was moving, but I'd still have to be working with kids.
Yeah.
So I don't know. If I wasn't doing this, I'd probably actually just be like a stay-at-home mom, which I think is one of the hardest jobs in the world, because you can never walk away from your job, right? And bless children, but sometimes you're just like, you need to leave my presence for a minute, So I probably would do that just because that's still working with kids, or maybe like a child advocate or something like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. This job just fits my personality really well.
Yeah.
I don't know what else I could do.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with that. So some things that people don't know is you came from a small town and a small school.
Yes, I did.
I'm guessing that there's probably some strange things that went on in your career. So what's something that's strange that's happened in your class?
Well, I have had students literally leave class to go move cows and go brand cows, which was funny. I actually had one of them offer when I was pregnant with my first child. They were like, "Do you want to come help us brand cows?" And I was like, "No, thank you. I can't handle smells right now. Can you imagine me branding a cow? No." I've also, so the small town that I lived in, everybody was related to everybody. Mm-hmm. And I've taught, full families, I've taught siblings, cousins, all of that. I have had an aunt and a niece in the very short amount of time that I've worked. They were like a year apart, which I thought was kind of crazy. The aunt was just a few years older than her niece. And when I had her, I was like, I said, what's it like to have, nieces and nephews that are older than you? And she's like, it is so weird. Yeah. And she just gave me this look, and I knew her family really well, so it was kind of funny. I went to school with some of her brothers, and yeah, that was probably the weirdest thing. But I don't know, you just get used to it, and like people getting picked up in horse trailers or on horseback. Yeah. I've seen that. Yeah. So but I always thought it was really funny. Yeah.
Yeah. What someone considers strange would just be normal.
Yeah, I was just like, sure. They would leave school and go over to the rodeo grounds and practice rodeo stuff, and that was just how it was. Yeah. I thought it was great.
That's hilarious. So. All right, so you made us the last question. So you have the ability to control every billboard, or probably now it's electronic sign in the country.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
For one day, what would you say on that billboard?
I think the billboards that always get my attention are the ones that make me think a little bit. They're funny, but they make you think like, what are you actually trying to tell me? There's this company based out of Utah called Domo, I think, and they always had the most interesting billboards, and they're all across the I-15 corridor in the Salt Lake area, and they're always obscure references to movies, but ones that make you think like, oh yeah, and I always loved those. So I don't know what I would say, but it would be something funny and thought-provoking, and hopefully something that would make you at least feel a little bit good, if not smiling at something stupid. It would probably be something Harry Potter related, or Lord of the Rings, because I love those things, but something like that, something nerdy and funny.
Yeah, that's hilarious. All right. Well, again, I know this is your time, so thanks so much for getting up. Well, I'm sure you're up anyways, but coming here and doing this podcast. Thanks, listeners, for tuning in. You never know who we're going to have next in our guests, so thanks so much, and see you next time.